Today I'm going to cover the press to handstand, specifically that first section, the bit where your toes just lift off the floor. Now this is ideal for people that are working towards their first press, or for those of you that already have a press that want to go for the double or the triple or the quadruple press. Now there's quite a few different options on how we can condition this bottom section, the bit where your toe is nearly touching the floor. So I'm going to run through some different drills today, and I'm going to start with the mobility work to get us in the right place, so we stand the best chance of having the most weight and energy in the hands and shoulders and the least amount of energy and weight in the legs. So let's start with that. Let's start with the hamstring work. So just a single leg hamstring stretch. So I'm going to go into a box. So you could go on the back of the sofa or something high up. I'm going to come into a 90-degree position. So ideally we'd be in a position where we can get 90-degree at the hip. This back leg is straight and then my torso is upright. If you don't have that, then we need to really work on that hamstring flexibility. So if we're there already, I'm going to lock the knee into that position. I'm going to flex the foot. I'm going to try and keep the hips facing forwards, and then I'm going to lean forwards as far as I can. Now I'm trying to get my chest towards my knee, my head towards my toes. I'm going to place my hands on the box. I'm in that position. Now I have got a cushion on here because it can wind up the Achilles. Okay, now I could just spend time here. Most of you are going to feel a big deep stretch in the hamstring here. The other thing that I'm going to try and do while I'm here is I'm going to try and pull my femur backwards. So take the femur behind me. So I'm going to have my hands on the box and then I'm going to slide. See how the foot's going backwards? So I'm actually going to fall off the box there. So I need to move the foot forwards, reposition, slide that foot as far as I can that way. So I'm trying to pull the femur backwards. It's going to give a very deep hamstring stretch. Now we could do reps here, we could do time, but to start with, just have a little play around with that position and see how that feels. And then we're going to swap over, do exactly the same thing on the other side. So that 90-degree position first, nice and upright torso, lock that knee backwards, lean forwards as far as I can, aiming to get the back as flat as possible, and then hands on the box and pull the femur backwards without moving the torso. For the video, I'm just going to do a short hold here. You could spend 60 seconds, 30 seconds. You could do contract, relax. Okay, and then I'm going to come back out. Continue with the hamstrings, just go into like a forward fold position, so locking the knees backwards, taking the elbows towards the floor. Now, I'd say this is probably the number one component in trying to get the hips on top of the hands for the press to handstand. So quick wrist prep. So while I'm doing this, I'm also going to prep the scapula, so get into my protraction. So I'm rounding the upper back. So protractions when we push up, shoulder blades will be hugging the side of the rib cage. Retraction, so the opposite would be down there. So while I'm doing the wrists, I'm going between that protraction and retraction. So peeling the hands up and down. Now, obviously, if you need a longer wrist prep, do that. If your wrists feel good to go, we'll jump into the first movement. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have my feet shoulder width apart. I'm going to place my hands away from me. So I'm in like a down dog position. And then I'm going to protract and push the shoulders into the floor. Well, it's like I'm pushing down, but I'm also round and pushing. It'd be exactly the same if I was trying to push. So I was trying to push this wall over. What I would do with my shoulders, so I'd protract and I would naturally go into that like hunchback type position, but like a planche. Fingers are slightly externally rotated. Push, and then I'm just going to go up onto tiptoes. Now it's like I'm sending my energy not this way. So a lot of people make that mistake. They just keep taking their shoulders forwards. They feel like you're going to face plant. You're going up, but you're actually sending your energy more up that direction. Now this isn't going to work because Rosie has a bone. So she's going to be really noisy. So we want to use this initial position as assessment to see where the hips are, to see how much energy, how much weight we can get into the hands, how much energy and weight we can take out of the feet, but also just see how long you can hold the position. So we'll just see if we can hold for 15, 20 seconds in that position and not put weight back into the toes. So video yourself doing that movement. See what it looks like from the side. Draw a line down from your hip to see where the line comes relevant to your hands. Ideally, the hip should nearly be on top of the hands. Next, let's just work some straddle good mornings. So trying to open and close the hip. So open position is there. I'm in a straddle position a little bit wider this time. And then as I go backwards, I'm going to stick my butt backwards, take the head down towards the floor, and then stand all the way back up again. So just making sure that I can open and close the hip. So this is going to work adductors, hamstrings, and then the posterior muscles for open and close in the hip. So we can start to play with that position. So we could use that same movement, but now I'm going to hold for less time. If we can, we could hover, or just get more weight into the hands, less weight into the feet, or we could hold for a longer time and do more conditioning. Both are useful. Now we're going to make it a little bit more fun, but also a little bit more challenging. So holding that position, I'm now going to lift one leg. So I'm going to hold that position, bend one leg, come back down, bend the other leg. Now watch when I do that, see how I can do it, and I keep the same amount of weight in the hands and shoulders. Same thing, video yourself, watch it back, check that you're not dumping weight backwards into the foot when you lift the other foot up. Try and keep all that weight into the hands and shoulders. Now, advanced option there is to swap when the feet are at the top. Now we can play around with that position again, but a little bit different. We're going to do it a little bit more dynamic. So I call these straddle hops. So I'm getting to the point where I just start to float and then bring the foot forwards. Now what will normally happen is as you bring the foot forwards, you flex the foot, which actually brings the hip back down. So I'd say that's like a downside of this movement, that it drops the hip when you go forwards. Now if you do struggle with this one, you can use a little bit more of momentum. So advanced version would be doing the same thing, but clapping the feet together with the toes pointed. Plus we can also do the movement backwards. Now we can do these drills up against the wall. Now when I'm doing up against the wall, we could either start at the top and then lower into the position, or we could start at the bottom and just try and find the position. Just be a little bit careful with the wall, is that it promotes you to push in that direction and not so much in that direction. And also it can be very hard on the wrists. So don't put your hands too far away, and make sure that you turn your hands out. So I'm guiding myself in with the head first, but with the goal of getting that upper back to touch. And then I could do the same drills. I could hold in that position. I could do the step. I could swap at the top. Okay, and then the last one I'm going to do is I'm going to cover eccentrics. So starting at the top of the handstand and lowering down. Now I could pass through straddle. I could pass through pike. I could pass through tuck, or I could do something in between like a frog, which is slightly easier, where we just bend the legs and come down. But ideally with this one, you want to have a slow eccentric. I'm going to show the wall version in a second. So frog would look a bit like this, coming down, and now I'm going to try and hold just before my toe touches. So here. So my toe hasn't touched, but it's very close to the floor. A slightly easier version would be to not hold for as long, so just try and kiss the floor. Or a much easier version is we can do an eccentric press on the wall and just kiss the floor, either chest to wall or back to wall. So the wall version, I would kick up, take my butt to the wall, come down,
push my low back to the wall, mid back, upper back. Now I try and come down and just kiss, hover just off the floor.
Yeah, it's hard to talk when you do that. So hopefully that's given you some ideas on how you can condition that bottom bit of the press. It is the bit that most people struggle with, so don't worry if it's challenging. But I recommend whenever you do any handstands or any work where your wrists are warmed up, that you spend a little bit of time in that first position just to get very comfortable there. If you struggle flexibility wise, work the hamstrings, work the Jefferson curls, work the inchworms, forward folds and things like that. Let me know if you have any questions, stick them in the comments below or send me a message. Thumbs up and subscribe will be appreciated, and I'll speak to you next time. Thanks, guys.